I knew that I had a problem, right? Like, as a grown man, I'm watching porn in shopping malls in the private restroom all by myself. Yeah, monetarily, I mean, obviously you're giving your time, energy, focus, all these things, soul. Once again, now it's isolated, right? Like, to go into a strip club, you have to show face. Like, you gotta go out into public. You sit in a dark room all by yourself, pull up the laptop, and feel like you're having a real relationship with a woman through a screen. She knows what she's doing, right? She's got 10,000 of them that she's doing the exact same thing with. Jump in an ice bath for 3 minutes, hard work, massive amounts of building.
On this episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast, I'm here with Frank Rich and my balls. We're going to talk about porn today. So, Frank, you are a former bodybuilder, clearly. You're fucking jacked. And you're the CEO of Rebuilt Recovery, a company that provides fitness training along with one-on-one coaching for men aiming to break free from porn addiction. I myself have been there. So talk to us about your journey from porn addiction, where it started, to how you realized it was a problem, and then how you started to overcome that.
Absolutely, Taylor. And I think you, as with millions of men, have struggled with this thing. So I'm grateful and truly honored to be here today, and appreciate you opening up your platform for this conversation. The introduction to porn, man, so a little bit of context. I'm 39 years old, and I was introduced, or I first stumbled upon porn at the age of 6. And I always reference and bring the age because at 6 years old, as a 39-year-old man, it wasn't the internet that we have readily available today. Yeah. I think we'll get into that's a different,
a whole nother beast,
animal and a different drug. But for me, seeing it at 6, finding it in my dad's drawer, taught me two things. There's two key lessons, I guess. I don't think they were really lessons, but what it did to a 6-year-old at that time. Number one is I found something that my dad was hiding. Mm-hmm. It was hid underneath some socks inside of a drawer. I shouldn't have been there, right? But as a young boy's processing this mind, okay, well now dad has things that he's keeping away from us. So that kind of behavior was implanted in me at a very, very young age, and it carried with me really throughout my entire life till I was almost 35 years old. I always had a way to kind of keep secrets about myself, things that I was participating in, things that I was doing, and I didn't want other people to know. So we'll get to how that kind of really began to manifest and really took me to some dark places. The second thing that came out of it was obviously the curiosity about the female body, right? As a young boy, you've never seen a female body in that nature. Like, oh wow, this is something that's truly amazing. I like the way that it makes me feel inside. So through my childhood and teenage years, like it was the magazines, right? This was, you'd be lucky if you could, find one in the woods or steal one from your friend's dad or whatever. Maybe every once in a while you could sneak one out of a 7-Eleven.
Hold on. Have you ever found a nudie magazine in the woods?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, let's start with this story.
Yeah, so we had, right outside of my neighborhood, I grew up here in Tampa, Florida, in a typical, middle class kind of suburban neighborhood. So it was kind of the gated community. Right on the other side was an entry point into the woods. And the older boys, a few years older than me, had built a fort out there. So I remember the first time I was with a buddy of mine, Davey Smith. We stumbled out into the woods. He's like, hey, I want to show you this fort where all these guys are at. There's beer bottles. There were probably crack needles at the time. I can't remember that. But underneath this kind of mattress, you could pull it up. And dude, there was a collection of them, passed down from the boys that were, now moving on into middle school and high school. It was like, here it is for the elementary school kids. And it's funny because we're having this, part of the conversation. I had Elliot Holtz on the podcast a couple of years ago, and he shared that same exact story, how when he was growing up. And a lot of the YouTube comments are so funny because all the young men today that have only lived with the internet don't understand what it was back then. And they're like, why are all these old guys always talking about finding magazines in the woods? It was just something that was a part of our culture back then. I don't know how old you are, but
27.
Yeah, so probably a little bit different of a time you growing up. But yeah, there were definitely a lot of them out there, and you wanted to participate in that, so you would figure out a way to maybe steal one from a Circle K or from a convenience store, and now you had the prize, so you kind of get to become like the leader within the group. They're like, hey, did you see what Frank kind of left out there? We can make jokes about this stuff now, but so 6 carried with me, through my 30s. It really became a problem, though, in my early 20s. And this is going to be due to the rise in the internet. And this is what I think we'll probably get into, the internet conversation, how it's a completely different drug, how the brain responds completely different to it. I was working in the wireless industry in my early 20s. We were a distributor for T-Mobile. So I was like a very early adopter of the BlackBerry phone. And I can almost remember it like the first time I realized, like, I can get porn on my phone anywhere I want now. Like, this is amazing. Thinking as a young man, like, I don't have to go to the magazines anymore. I don't have to worry about it being on my laptop. Like, I can just literally keep it here in my smartphone. So keeping with what I shared at the beginning, right, holding these secrets, that behavior that I learned at 6 years old carried with me through my 20s and into my 30s. So as I got into relationships, it was something that was always kind of kept to the secret. Even some of the things that I was doing with drugs and alcohol, I don't know if we'll get into this part there, but I've had some struggles there as well. Never in terms of like I would identify as a drug addict or as an alcoholic. I think bodybuilding helped me really keep a strong grasp around that. Like, I could go 6 months out of the year on a contest prep and not touch anything. But then when it was like off season kind of party time, it was like, let's just open up the funnel, right? We're just going to go balls to the wall. So I always had the ability to kind of turn things off, turn things on, because porn doesn't have any calories. This is how I was, processing it back then. It's like, I can participate in this behavior, and it's a normal thing, right? Every guy is, consuming pornography. I would say my early 30s is when I began to feel the effects of it. I'm a bodybuilder, working in the health and fitness space, personal training, background, health, fitness, like the pinnacle physically of a healthy male. I started to have some performance issues in the bed, and I couldn't figure it out. It's like, well, my test is great, I'm healthy, blood work is all there. Why can't I get or keep an erection while having sex? I wasn't connecting the dots back then. I wasn't willing to accept it, though. I knew what was causing it. I knew that the porn problem was, and my brain was like, well, I don't want to stop doing that because it's really not a major problem. Yeah, it creates this problem for me, but I can just take some drugs to overcome that. So as a 30-year-old man, I'm using Viagra and Cialis just to be able to perform sexually, not realizing that it's just causing the problem to get deeper and deeper and deeper, and much worse. 2018 is when it really shook me. I was running a business. So I've been in the entrepreneurship space for a little over a decade now. Had a very successful company from 2013 to 2018 in the ticketing and entertainment space. So we were a ticket broker, very similar to like a StubHub, Vivid Seats kind of thing, where we bought and sold, great margins, great profits, all things, did a few $1 million in sales. I was so unfulfilled, and as somebody that worked from home, I caught myself spending more time every single day consuming porn than I was putting into the business. So after having first great success the first 3 years, the numbers started to drastically go down. And as somebody that wasn't equipped to handle the problems emotionally, like, because I'm not connecting all the dots here, I'm like, well, things are just getting worse. Like, I'm just beginning to now seek out more and more porn. I was in a relationship. We were growing more distant apart. It had really become a problem between us sexually. Because what porn does, right, it hijacks your desires, what you ultimately want. And anybody that's been in it long enough knows that the material you start consuming gets more dark, more hardcore, and it's going to continue to get worse. And then you're going to try to bring those things into your life as well. So that was a big part. And then I heard a podcast, which I've been a big fan of this platform for a really, really long time. Summer of 2018, I heard a podcast with an author of a book called Surfing for God. The author's name is Michael John Cusick. This was the first time, Taylor, I'd ever heard two men talk about their struggles with pornography. I knew that I had a problem, right? Like as a grown man, I'm watching porn in shopping malls in the private restroom all by myself. I would avoid social situations. So I knew that there was irregular behavior that I was participating in. I didn't understand the umbrella of pornography addiction because it wasn't a topic that was discussed a lot. 2017, 2018. I mean, really, these last couple of years, you've been beginning to see it become more and more regularly discussed in the mainstream. But back then, nobody was talking about it. When I heard Michael and the host of the podcast talk about their struggles and how they were breaking free, I'm like, wow, maybe that's me. Maybe I'm Michael. Maybe this porn behavior is really an addiction. And maybe this is the root of some of your depression, some of your social anxiety that you're dealing with, all of these other feelings. So I started diving into the research. You know, as somebody that has a background, health, fitness, like I always want to look for, okay, what is the research that supports this? Like, yeah, you can hear great stories. There can be great anecdotal kind of explanations for things, but is there some research that's documenting what's going on here with the brain and how do you get out of this? That led me to finding Gary Wilson's work, Gary wrote Your Brain on Porn, which has, you know, really been groundbreaking in the entire space. And he had a great talk on YouTube called The Great Porn Experiment, where he gets into the internet, how it's shaping really society today, how it's really hijacking young boys' minds. So seeing all of this, seeing some of the science that was out there, I'm like, wow, Frank, you really do have a problem. A couple incidences that really played a role in my life was coming to my faith. So late 2018, I did come to my faith as we didn't have a real religious background growing up. Through a series of networking and really being around some very successful men, I came to my faith. And that kind of set me down this path of like, okay, now I'm really going to start trying to clean some of the skeletons out of my closet. And I talked about it, had some issues with drinking. So as the clock turned over into 2019, so this was late 2018 when I came to my faith. New Year's 2019, I'm like, I'm going to go this whole year without drinking. I'm not competing anymore. I'm not a bodybuilder at this point. So I would have social drinking here and there. I'm like, I'm just going to go the entire year without drinking. I also had kind of put a little bit of weight on. I'd gotten probably in the worst shape that I'd been in since high school. You know, I was 30, 40 pounds overweight. A lot of it was just stress eating. Things weren't going really well in the business. So like, I need to do something rapidly to kind of turn my physique around as well. And I've been doing some research on autoimmune diets because my girlfriend was struggling with RA at the time. And I found Michaela and Jordan Peterson in the carnivore diet. I'm like, this looks like something pretty simple, you know, like I just eat meat for 30 days. I'm like, sure, I can do that. Like, so I did the carnivore diet in that first month of January 2019. I lost 21 pounds in 30 days. Like the mental clarity, it changed my life. Just the focus. So coming out of that, this takes us to February of 2019. I'm sitting down after a workout one day with a good buddy of mine, Zach. Zach's a former Marine, somebody I hold a lot of respect for, like just a masculine dude. We're having this conversation, and he's like, dude, I gotta tell you about these breathing exercises that I'm doing. This was like all out of nowhere. Like we were talking about the workout that day, and then he immediately gets into, dude, I gotta tell you about this breathing exercise that I'm doing. Obviously, he was studying Wim Hof. He's like, it's giving me great energy, great clarity. I feel more at peace. He's like, but more than anything, Frank, it's helping me control my issues with porn. And I kind of paused for a minute because we had never discussed porn. Like it had never come up in a conversation. I kind of leaned in. I'm like, what did you just say, Zach? He's like, yeah, man, I've had a porn addiction for almost a decade. He starts going into when he was in Iraq, how the Marines had this tent set up, and it was literally like, you're stressed, go to the porn tent.
Literally, that's
yes, we've experienced it. Yeah, we've had some. I've had some former soldiers on the podcast as well talking about the problem, and I was like, wow, hearing that from him, and he's like, dude, I was never able to break it once I got back. He's like, yeah, it was there as a stress reliever while you were overseas. He's like, but that stayed with him when he returned to the States. So for the last 6-7 years, he's like, I've been struggling with this. The only thing that's helping me is some of these breathing exercises. I said, wow, that's fascinating, Zach. I'm like, I don't know why you felt compelled to tell that to me right now. I'm like, but I've been looking into porn addiction myself, and I think I have a major problem. It's almost as if him talking about it was like the door that I needed open to start talking about it myself.
Yeah.
Because I've been looking at the research, right? I've been watching all the YouTube videos, but I still hadn't had a conversation with anybody, right? Because who do you go to?
Yeah.
You know, it's like there wasn't a Coach Frank back then on the internet talking about it. There wasn't a Taylor hosting a podcast. So I was like, wow, Zach. I'm like, this was a sign, man. I'm like, I've been thinking a lot about my own issues with this. I've realized I've had a major problem with this. I was like, whatever you felt the need to talk about this, I want to thank you because I'm going to make a commitment here to you today. Zach, I'm sick and tired of having this as a part of my life. It's infiltrated every single part of my life. It's had impact on my relationship with Stephanie at the time, my ex. It's impacted my ability to show up at work, to produce income. It's impacted how I feel socially. I'm sick and tired of it, bro. Like, I was at a point where I was just fed up. I'm like, Zach, so I'm making a commitment to you here today. I need a couple things, though. And these are lessons here, right? So any guy that's out there, like, this is the first key lesson. It's like, it's not a battle you try to do or overcome on your own. It's like, Zach, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm asking you, you seem to have gotten some handle on this. Will you support me, be accountable? If I call you, he's like, brother, whatever you need. Like I said, a real dude, you know what I mean? Like a real brother of mine.
Yes.
So he's like, absolutely. So I said, that's amazing, bro. Like, let's start this journey together. I'm like, the next thing is I need to go home and tell Stephanie. I don't know why I felt the need, but, you know, our relationship wasn't great at the time, but we had been together for 4 years. You know, we had really meshed our lives together, and we had conversations around future, family, all these things. If anything's going to change with our relationship, it's going to start by me sharing the truth with her. So I wrestled with that conversation, Taylor, the entire drive home. And I didn't tell her that day, but I woke up the next morning really feeling convicted too. So I'm an early riser, so I'd been up for a couple hours already, probably working that day. So actually getting ready in the bathroom that morning, I can remember going into the closet in my office where I had a secret laptop. So there's a great sign, right? It's like I literally had a laptop that was dedicated only to consuming pornography. Because I've been caught in the past with previous, I'm like, nobody's ever going to find it again because I will just put on this laptop that you don't know exists. And when Steph leaves, I'd go into the closet, I'd pull it out. This is how bad it was, Taylor. We lived in a 2-story townhome. Anytime she left the house, I would watch her car from the upstairs room. I could see as it turned, and then as she made the turn out of our neighborhood, I knew she was gone.
Laptop.
I'd go downstairs, lock the door, pull the laptop off, and I mean, it was within minutes of her being gone that I'm getting set up. The key with locking the door, right? So now I could hear it, because there'd be a handful of times like she would return home, and then be like, well, why is the door locked, Frank? I left just 5 minutes ago. Oh, I went outside and checked the mailbox, and I must have locked it by. You know what I mean? Just, once again, lying, keeping secrets. It's like just this pattern of behavior that was injected into me at the age of 6. So that next morning, I tell her, I grab the laptop, I walk into the restroom, she gives me this weird look like, what are you doing in the restroom while I'm, you know, trying to get ready for the day? And what is the laptop that's underneath your arm? So I share all this with her. You know, I don't think it had been a secret that I probably watched porn, because I'm sure somewhere in our relationship I probably asked her if she wanted to, just to see how far I could kind of push things. But I began to just really share everything. Steph, this has been with me since I've been 6, you know, all these secrets. I feel it's impacted some of our intimacy, some of the things that, you know, I've tried to do here. I know that that's a byproduct of it. We both get incredibly emotional. You know, I apologize for all of this. I tell her I'm committed to doing everything I can to keep it out of my life. And the powerful part there, and I think that this was very defining in my journey, was I literally took the laptop and I ripped it apart. You know, like the laptop that kind of folds like in 2 pieces, like big check, dude. Like it sounds cool. Like I broke a laptop with my bare hands, but they're made to be, you know, they're made in 2 different pieces. So
Sounds fun.
yeah, I mean, but it was the symbolization, right? It was like me showing to myself, me showing to her, and me showing to pornography. Like, right? Like this has been your gateway for the past however many years. It's no longer available there for you. It's like, you know, resisting cutting off all access to that temptation. So I go downstairs. I text Zach, I hold up to my end of the word. I said, hey man, I had the conversation with Steph. I want to thank you for yesterday. I really appreciate everything you've done for me. I'm excited for whatever's going to come. I was sure. I had no clue, man, because once again, I wasn't in the forums, I wasn't in like the no fap space. I wasn't keen on like how it's changing your life and, what's going to be the byproduct. I just knew I was done with this behavior and I was ready to create a life without it. So I text Zach and say, hey, dude, I just want to let you know we've done everything. I shared it with Stephanie. And then I sent a message to another very close brother of mine. And this was a video message. And I shared with him, Josh had been with me for the last year. He knew a lot of the struggles that I was going through. He was kind of my spiritual mentor at the time, kind of a big brother, uncle type of role he played in my life. So I wanted to share with him. And I'm like, Josh, you know me for a year. I've struggled with a handful of things. I've never shared this with you, but I've had a porn addiction for so many years. I'm committed to this life without it now, though. Here's the laptop. I show him as I'm throwing it away. And what was powerful there is as I'm ending that video message to him, I look in the camera and I'm like, Josh, I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I feel like today is the beginning of something truly great and something truly special. And so that would have been February 15th. These next couple of months, man, I kept my word. I leaned into Zach. He was there for support when I was struggling. I leaned into Josh. We would have regular conversations, just checking in. How are you doing? Are you resisting certain things? But because I felt so good talking to Zach, talking to Josh, even talking with Seth about it, like it was so freeing, like talking about these things that you'd held a secret for so many years. Like, who else can I tell about this? I started going through my friend list and I was like, hey, Mike, hey, Chris, hey, Justin, like, let's meet up for coffee. I got something I want to talk to you about. And I wouldn't tell them why we were meeting. We'd sit down, we started to have a little casual conversation. I'm like, hey, I called you here for a reason here today. I don't know if you ever had this issue in your life, but I've had an addiction to porn for a really, really long time. And I'd share with them, some of what happened. I'd share with them what I was doing. And what was powerful there is I was worried, right? How are they going to view me? Are they going to look at me as less of a man? Is there going to be any shame associated with this? It didn't matter who I shared it with. He could be the CEO of a $10+ million company, or he could be, my uncle that's a fireman. It didn't matter what role or what position that guy held in life. Every time I shared it with him and I would start to get emotional, they would say, Frank, calm down, brother. Like, this is something we've all had to deal with. Mm-hmm. I've had my own struggles with it. You're going to be okay. And I think hearing that time and time again from guys that I really respected showed me that it's like, okay, I've had a struggle in my life, but it's not going to become my identity. It's not going to hold me back from really doing the things that I wanted to do. So that's really what carried me for those first 3, 4, 5 months. But I will tell you, Taylor, it did change my life. I think the way that I started to see people really started to change. Some of how I wanted to feel connected. As somebody that struggled with a lot of social anxiety and isolation for almost 20 years, I began to seek out community. I just wanted to be around people because I felt connected to people for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because I was sharing the whole version of Frank. Yeah. It didn't matter if I was consciously aware about it at the time, but for 20 years, if I'm holding on to a part of my life that I'm not willing to share with Taylor, I'm not willing to share with anybody, I'm never going to feel connected because I don't feel connected to myself and I'm not giving them my full self. So it was I always felt disconnected in any relationship. But those first 3, 4 months, I just felt so close to everybody. And then I started to think, how did this happen, Frank? Yeah, you saw it when you were 6, but you never got deep into drugs. You never really allowed alcohol to control you. You've been deep into self-development. You've been attending seminars. You've been paying for coaches. You've read hundreds of books at this time. Like, why did this still rise up in your life? And then what about the guys that maybe don't have access to some of the materials that you do? What about the guys that aren't really investing in themselves, aren't focused on the personal development that you are? Do they even feel that there's a way out of it? Yeah. So that was kind of the call for me, Taylor, to launch my podcast. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've loved this platform for many, many years. I've always wanted to have a show. I never had a story or reason or mission behind it. But now I had something that I could talk about that I felt was my journey was valuable to others. So that led me to launch the podcast, The Secret of My Life, July of that year. So, 4, 5, 6 months after really getting free from it, And the original mission was just to put my story out there with hope that it can inspire others and bring other people that overcome adversity. It wasn't always porn addiction. There was a lot of early episodes we did around the conversation because that's really what I was feeling, pulled and called to. But we had guys on that were struggling with heroin addiction or alcohol addiction, or even sometimes just imposter syndrome. And just putting that good message out into the world and showing people that it didn't matter where you are or where you came from, there's always hope to get to where you want to go. If you're willing to recognize the problem, admit it, and then be willing to do the hard work. What was cool is like the messages I was receiving socially, because I've been running a small fitness company at the time, doing a lot of like workout stuff. So had a small following, 4,000 or 5,000 on Instagram at the time, small little YouTube channel. So we had regular messages on a daily basis. What was cool is after launching the podcast, we got picked up by iTunes. They put us on their new Noteworthy page in those early couple months. So that gave us some early exposure. Then I started receiving messages just from guys thanking me. Like, Frank, thank you for addressing this topic. Some from women, but what was powerful is the men were just, you could tell that they were wrestling with something inside and kind of having an outlet, just like I had with Michael when I heard the conversation back in 2018. So they started saying, Frankie, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for what you're doing. This is really shining a light on something that not a lot of people are talking about. About 5-6 months into the podcast, though, those messages began to ask for help. So it was not just thank you for what you're doing, but can you help us? We love the conversations. We love what you're doing and how it's turned your life around. Can you help us? And this was January 2020, so kind of pre-COVID. I was full in a marketing agency. I was kind of the number 2 there, really running that. So I was focused on the career, building that up, running the small little fitness business on the side as well. So I didn't really know if I could help, right? It's like I had no background in porn addiction recovery. Yeah, I've had some leadership training. I've obviously, been a coach in the health and fitness space. But I don't know about addiction recovery. And then the men around me, like my kind of inner circle, is like, Frank, you've overcome this, and it's actually going to open up a bigger calling on your life. So there's a lot of people pushing me to start at least trying to help men. So January 28th of 2020, I remember it was a Monday. I had just left a marketing event that weekend where they taught this like simple kind of, it's called an SMS post, where it's kind of like, I'm looking for 3 or 5 people that are struggling with this problem, and I'll provide the solution. So they taught this training at the marketing event. And I was sitting on it that Sunday night, and I'm like, would this work for porn addiction recovery with my little small following that I had? So that Monday morning, I put the post together. I threw it out there on Instagram to my little 3,000-4,000 followers at the time. Just, hey, I'm looking for 3 guys that are struggling with compulsive behavior with porn and are sick and tired of living with a secret. I'll coach you over the next 4 months to help you gain control over this and rebuild your life. No clue what it was going to lead to. No clue if I was going to get a single inquiry about it at all, or maybe it would blow up. Was able to get 2 guys signed up that day, and that became the genesis of what has now become Rebuilt Recovery. So now I had to build and fulfill what I had sold, because I'd sold them a 4-month coaching program. So those first 2 clients, gracefully helped me build the curriculum that we've now, worked with hundreds of guys through, and there's been iterations of it, but that was really the genesis of the coaching. So early 2020, after being free myself for a year at that point, I started going down the path of coaching other men. So long-winded rant and story there, but that's kind of the journey from 6 to 36 and everything kind of in between.
Whew. Love it. Damn. Open and hot.
What you put into your body today is the foundation for who you become tomorrow. That's why I fuel with Ketone IQ from HVMN. They're redefining the limits of human performance, metabolism, and longevity. I use Ketone IQ before every podcast to keep my mind sharp and clear. Head over to hvmn.com and use code CaptainMorgan_20 to get yours today. Back to the show.
Cheers.
Here we go.
Down the hatch.
The whole shot there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in about 20 minutes, get a little bit of a heightened, mental clarity.
Focus in on the gut.
Wow. So many places I want to go. Let's start with the difference between starting with magazines, which is what you first discovered, versus what we have now, aka everything. So what was your experience going from magazines to then having your own personal laptop dedicated to pornography?
Great question. I mean, if you think about, okay, like if I'm an alcoholic, right? You know, I have my drink of choice is whiskey or whatever. Comes in, you know, a pint, liter, you know, and I can maybe get a gallon size if you're that hardcore. But once it's done, it's done. And if you want more, you got to find a way to, through finding the resources, you know, most people have enough money to go buy some alcohol, but you have to make a trip to the liquor store, you have to pick it up. Like, so there's barriers to get your drug. Same thing with, you know, most substances, right? There's always going to be a barrier.
A little bit of resistance.
That you have to go through. Great organization out there called Fight the New Drug. They talk about the big 3 A's that make internet pornography just incredibly dangerous. Number 1 is the accessibility of it. You know, 30% of today's internet is pornographic material. So it's just readily available there for us all the time. Like, a crackhead doesn't have his dealer in his pocket with him 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know, and our brains, like, they know that it's there, right? It's like this unconscious kind of thing. Like, okay, whenever I'm feeling stressed, anxious, tired, distracted, whatever, what you need is literally sitting in your pocket. So it almost becomes this like unconscious pattern where we're just constantly returning back to it. So the first A is the accessibility. The second one is the affordability of it. We talked about the ability to need to acquire resources to get liquor or any type of substance. Like, you have to have money. And if you're struggling on hard times, like it's food or drugs, a lot of people choose the drugs, but there's still that barrier that you have to go through. Pornhub, any of these major streaming sites, it's 100% free.
Monetary.
Yeah, monetarily. I mean, obviously you're giving your time, energy, focus, all these things, soul, 100%. You're becoming the product.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, what are you having to pay? Zero. Yeah. So a 12-year-old, 14-year-old boy that like doesn't have a dollar to his name, he's like, well, all this stuff is for free, not realizing like, these companies are just monetizing all of your energy, all of your focus, and like you said, your soul as well. So accessibility, the affordability, and then the anonymity component. So it's completely secret.
Yeah, no one
right?
knows.
You know, nobody is in your bedroom, nobody is in the bathroom with you while you're consuming it. You're an alcoholic. You're people around enough people long enough. They're gonna smell it in your breath. You're gonna begin to slur, like how you act, how you show up. Same things with drugs. It's gonna begin to change your physical expressions. Porn in the room by yourself. You don't have to leave. You don't have to contact. You don't have to do anything with anybody. So I think those big 3 is what really makes it so much different from a magazine. And it's that new stimulus. You know, a magazine back in the day, you
only got so much.
There'd be maybe 5 centerfolds total of maybe 3-4 images. So maybe you have 20 different images variety to you. You know, Pornhub at one point 2 years ago had over 12 million videos just on that one site. The amount of time it would take for you to sit down and consume all the pornographic material that's readily available for free today is like 165 years. Like, you don't have enough time on this planet to consume it all. So as the male brain is wired for that new stimulus, right? That variety component, it just hijacks that completely. So I think those are a lot of the things that really make it, like I said, a whole different ballgame or a whole different drug.
Yeah. I was talking with my buddy Mason Cord today. He's a men's health and wellness coach similar to us. And he got a message today actually that said, hey, I'm struggling with a porn addiction, and his addiction is with cam girls. So then it's like live interaction with the women. How is that different from just free internet pornography? Because one, you got to pay for it, and then 2, it's like a live interaction. It's like a step above. I imagine that is extra dopamine. I see the modern day cam girls or OnlyFans as like the modern day version of strip clubs. Yeah, there's still strip clubs readily available, and that was a struggle that I had in my early 20s as a guy that didn't have great success, through his teenage years with
women, now you're walking to a strip club at 21, 22, you have this beautiful naked woman that not only is going to take her clothes off for you, but she's going to talk to you like she's interested in you.
Yes.
She's going to give you that feeling of like, now there's a relationship kind of component to it. So with the cam girls and with the OnlyFans, it's hijacking that next layer of the real intimacy, right? It's like you don't feel intimate when you're consuming pornography, but if you send a message to a girl on OnlyFans and she maybe smiles back at you, or she sends you a little heart, or maybe a thanks, sweetie, now there's this back and forth exchange. And once again, from kind of from a primal instinct, like your brain doesn't know how to decipher like that relationship versus one that I'm experiencing in real life. So it's adding another layer where it's like these men, as they're struggling and as they feel isolated, well, these girls understand me and they like me and they accept me for who I am. So yeah, modern day cam girls, OnlyFans is like strip clubs on steroids, because once again, it's now it's isolated, right? Like to go into a strip club, you have to show face. Like you got to go out into public. You can sit in a dark room all by yourself, pull up the laptop, and feel like you're having a real relationship with a woman through a screen. And she knows what she's doing, right? She's got 10,000 of them that she's doing the exact same thing with. All she's looking at is the top and bottom line of whatever revenue she's bringing.
Yes, and oftentimes it's guys who are running their accounts for them.
Yeah.
So oftentimes you're just talking to a dude who's just fucking with you for your money.
Yeah.
Fuck. Man. All right, we covered some of them, but let's specifically get into some of the side effects of porn addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. I touched on, some of what I experienced, from the physical symptoms, right? The porn-induced erectile dysfunction. I think that's the biggest one that is really impacting young men here today. You can talk about the testosterone and how that's playing a role, and I know that's a big part of what your work does with health optimization and everything. But young men today in their 20s, have the testosterone levels of guys in their 60s, just 30 years ago. Yeah, it's playing a small role in it. I had a video that went viral recently on Instagram. It's somewhere near 2 million views right now. And it was a reaction video that I did to a young girl talking about a man that she was having relations with. And he admitted to her that I can't get off through sex. I have to have sex and then I have to masturbate to finish.
Wow.
She's sharing this story and she's like on a podcast episode and she's like, yeah, it's completely normal. And it's very common for guys today. So my reaction was, I'm not sure what's more concerning here. The fact that the young man has a problem or the fact that the young woman thinks that it's completely normal that young men today are having this problem. That got a lot of pushback because, once you kind of reach those numbers on the internet, it's like you kind of tap into like just a whole different ballgame out there. I'm sure you've experienced that. Yeah. But that's the big one, man, is, it's wiring or rewiring how your brain deals with, seeks out, and even handles like the physical sexual release. What fires together, wires together. So most young men today, once again, speaking on the internet, by the time a young man has his first sexual experience, whether it's 17, 18, 20, 22 years old, whatever age he's reaching at, there's a very good likelihood that that young man has had hundreds, if not thousands, of sexual releases before he's had his first sexual experience.
Yes.
So his brain has been wired and conditioned that, okay, this natural physical act that your body is meant to do naturally, the pathway to there is by watching videos on a screen and then masturbating yourself. And that becomes the pathway. I mean, it literally is a neural firing of your brain. So I think the PIED is a big one. I talked about shame as well. I believe when you have a part of your life that is held secret, the ability to truly connect with other human beings is impossible.
Yep.
Because you're not showing up. There's a lot of great words thrown around in the personal development space, right? Authenticity, vulnerability, be your true whole self. All of that is great, right? But what they're ultimately saying is, I have to feel comfortable giving 100% of myself to you. Like, there's no, I'm holding nothing back here today. Ask me whatever you want. I'm not ashamed to talk about anything I've ever done. And I feel because of that, I have the ability to truly connect with you. But if every social interaction you go into, you're worried about, well, if they ask me this question, or if it gets into this topic, how am I going to feel uncomfortable? Like, you cannot fully express yourself. So it creates the inability, in my opinion, to truly connect with people on a deep heart soul or spiritual level. Talk about the objectification of women as well. You know, as you're training and conditioning yourself to look at women as sexual objects, every woman that you're going to begin to interact with outside in the world is immediately going to become a sexual object for you. I can't tell you how many young men I talk to that have the inability to look a beautiful woman in the eyes.
Yes.
Right? So those are a couple of them, man, you know, and then I would say probably once a guy has recognized the problem and is now working to get it out of his life, but is failing time and time again, now his belief and his confidence is going to be shattered because he's got this area of his life that I'm not happy. I know there's something wrong in me, yet I can't feel the need to overcome it. So there must be something wrong with me, or he begins to live in the state of being of shame. So he's lacking confidence, he's lacking belief, and then he's not pursuing other goals in his life. Porn obviously hijacks the reward center, so your motivations and your rewards are completely hijacked. So instead of like going out there and pursuing goals or building your body or building a business or having creative outlets or creative hobbies, it's like none of that feels as good as exactly.
You just freaking
You get all the dopamine in the world without having to put any of the work in. And I think Huberman does a great job of explaining it. Like, there's nothing wrong with dopamine. Dopamine in itself is an incredibly powerful chemical that is here for a reason. The problem comes is when you get these massive amounts of dopamine without putting any effort in.
Yeah.
Dopamine is meant to follow effort. Go to the gym, work on your body, get dopamine. Sit down for a deep work session, building a company. Dopamine's going to be another product of it. Jump in an ice bath for 3 minutes, hard work, massive spikes of dopamine. Yeah, I know you're a big fan of the ice baths. I saw that on your page.
I interviewed Kashif Khan. He's
I love Kashif.
CEO of the DNA company. He talks about getting dopamine in two different ways: pleasure versus reward. Mm-hmm. So most people are getting dopamine via pleasure. Which is what we just talked about. Just fucking releasing, eating food, watching Netflix, scrolling, TikTok, whatever. If you're addicted to pleasure-seeking modalities of dopamine, switching that to reward, so putting yourself in uncomfortable, challenging situations, hitting goals, like just moving one step closer to where you want to be, right? I want to go back to what you said about hiding things, right? Like if you feel like you have to hide these parts of you can't really connect. Another part of it is it's exhausting.
Oh, God.
To feel like you have to lie all the time or like hold something back. Like, I don't want them to see this part of me.
Yeah.
It's fucking exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, once you are able to show up as your true self, no matter what, like you said, you're not holding anything back, we can go anywhere. That's so freeing. And most guys today don't understand what that's like, myself included, up until I started to overcome my own porn addiction. It's like, that was my last addiction that I had to overcome. It's like, wow. It's like, you can finally breathe once you know that you're not hiding anything back. And especially for men, because integrity is such a big role in masculinity, if you're pretending to be someone and you're not actually that person, you're out of alignment with yourself. You're out of integrity, right? Let's now go to why people relapse. So quitting an addiction, no matter the addiction, is difficult. So what reasons have you found? Well, one, did you ever relapse after when you broke the laptop?
I never relapsed after that point. Now, I will say I had told myself I was going to quit many times over probably the 3, 4, 5 years leading up to that. At different points in relationships, you get caught, you're like, yeah, I'm done with this and that, da-da-da.
Yeah.
When I truly decided and committed to the life without it, no, there wasn't a point where I slid back or, I relapsed. And I think a lot of that was the choice, like the true decision and commitment. I think the biggest thing that holds a lot of guys back is like, it's the uncertainty of like, do I really want to give it up, right? Like, it's not that bad. Like, maybe I can control it. Maybe, maybe once a month is going to be okay. Maybe if I just go 30 days without it, I can have it as a part of my life. I remember something I heard Tony Robbins say. I've been a big fan of Tony for a really, really long time. He talks about, this is like one of his early seminars or books. He shares this story where he's dealing with people that are struggling with smoking tobacco, cigarettes, right? And he's got two people, I think they're standing on a stage at an event, and he offers them both a cigarette. The first person says, "No, thank you, Tony, I'm trying to quit." And then the second person says, "No, Tony, I don't want it, I'm no longer a smoker." And I think that's the key there, right? Is as long as you're trying to quit something, you're always holding on to the identity of the person that is struggling with it. I'm trying to quit pornography, which means that pornography is a problem in my life that I'm trying to overcome. When you make that internal shift, when you begin to live through the identity of the man that no longer looks at pornography, pornography is not the problem in your life anymore. You don't have to overcome it. You have to figure out what the root cause of the behavior was in the first place and heal that and maybe create better productive habits and a better life for yourself. But once you make that shift internally, I believe, to become the man that no longer looks at it, the struggle take care of themselves. And yeah, there's going to be work still, but that was the biggest shift for me. Telling Zach, rip the computer apart, was me saying, I am no longer the man that does this. And I think bodybuilding taught me a lot of lessons there, because as a competitor, you could go 4, 5, 6 months holding the identity of somebody that doesn't cheat on his diet, holding the identity of somebody that goes to the gym 2 hours a day or twice a day, whatever the case may be. So I had the ability to honor and keep commitment. I had never in my life just really made that real commitment to myself. So I think that was the biggest change for me. And that's really what we try to bring across in all the work that we do, is that this growth, this freedom that you're seeking is going to be found in an identity change. I believe all transformation, all successful transformation is rooted in an identity change first.
So soft talk. Soft talk are ambiguous words that get us off the hook for taking any action, for taking ownership in our life.
Is hope on here?
That definitely fits in the category.
It definitely does. Oh,
Yeah.
hopefully, yeah.
Yep.
No, I had a mentor, I was 22, man, coming up in the sales leadership space. I remember it, man, like so vividly. He used to have this saying, like, "Oh, we hope we hit our we hope we hit our numbers this month, or we hope we crush it." It's like, guys, hope is not a course of action.
Yeah.
God, it's so powerful, man. So I love this dude.
Soft talk creates soft results. And in this case, soft dick.
Yeah.
Porn-induced erectile dysfunction. So yeah, how long have people been trying to lose weight? How long have people been trying to quit porn addiction?
Yeah.
Quit smoking, right? You have to adopt the identity and the lifestyle of somebody who no longer does those things,
Yeah.
right? Completely change your lifestyle.
Well, on this, I want to say this is why things like accountability software, in my opinion, aren't a long-term effective solution. Because you put a Covenant Eyes, which we have a partnership with, great company out there. I think they can be utilized as a tool. But I'll get dozens of messages every single week. Frank, I'm struggling. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, well, I put the blocker on there. What is a blocker essentially doing? It's saying that there's something out there that you want that you're telling yourself you can't have. And if you know anything about human behavior, if you know anything about human conditioning, the minute you're told you can't have something, anybody listening that had children understands this. Anytime you're told something you cannot have, immediately your subconscious goes into, how the hell do I get that thing that I'm not supposed to have? So putting the blocker up there, in my opinion, is actually working against yourself, because when you're not consciously thinking about it, your brain is figuring out, okay, how can you get this thing without breaking the commitments and promises that you made to yourself? This is awesome.
Yeah, that's exactly why I created my brand, The Captain's Lifestyle, because so many people, they think that, if I do this, 30-day challenge, or if I go on this diet, I'm going to change. I'm going to get lasting results. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's why so many people relapse into, if you go on a diet, you're going to lose weight, but then you haven't changed who you are.
Yeah.
It's all going to come back.
Yeah.
Right? So same thing with porn addiction. You have to become the type of person who no longer consumes porn. And you said when you made the decision, like when you broke the laptop, that was your deciding moment. The etymology of the word decide is to
kill off,
to cut off, to cut ties with, So I am deciding, cutting off this old version of me. I am no longer this version.
Yeah.
I am now going this way. I love that. Burn the ships with this.
Yeah, and I take it a layer deeper, man. In my company, I love your mission. I love everything you're doing. You know, we talk about becoming a porn-free man. Our logo, right, is a phoenix, which is it then becomes a lion. Phoenix is a symbol of death and resurrection.
I see that.
You must die to your old self, and then through our coaching and through our program, you know, we come at it from a life, you know, full life coaching perspective. We're going to rebuild your body, we're going to rewire your brain, we're going to reshape your heart. So once you go through our curriculum, we're gonna kill off that old man, right? There's gonna be some pain, there's gonna be some suffering, there's gonna be some difficult work that you have to do. But our whole mission is then to unleash you back out into the world as the lion, the man that you were born and called and created to be. And that looks different for every single one of us, but it does go through that massive identity change. Huge, man.
What's your response to it's just what guys do? Because I have women asking me in my Instagram DMs like, hey, my boyfriend has been addicted to pornography and I'm losing the connection with him. Like our intimacy is dwindling. Like what can I do? I've tried to have these conversations with him and he replies it's just what guys do.
That's a weak man's response. I mean, yeah, you know, I fell into that trap, right? You know, thinking that this is just something that we all did. It was kind of a rite of passage type of thing. Maybe there was a point in time where that was the case. You know, maybe a Playboy was a rite of passage, you know, for young men back in the days. I think with everything that we understand about the brain and everything we understand about the internet and really what is happening, I think that is a guy that is unwilling to really look at himself in the mirror and be honest and true about who he is. Once again, that viral post, what it exposed more than anything is the amount of men that will argue on the internet as a way to deflect really their own insecurities. That's all I see when I see a man that is attacking a post that I made about young men struggling with porn-induced erectile dysfunction, is you have a problem and you're literally screaming at me through the keyboard.
Yeah.
Like, so I see it as a weak man's response. I don't think any woman out there needs to accept that from a man. I have a shirt that a company made for me. So I did a post probably 18 months ago. It was like a little meme, you know, I hijacked this Steven Crowder kind of coffee mug thing that he does from one of his talks, changed my mind, and I put on the whiteboard, real men don't watch porn, changed my mind. A buddy of mine runs an apparel company, he saw that post, he's like, I need to put that on a shirt.
Nice.
So now we got shirts that we sell, we give some money to human trafficking nonprofits that are fighting that fight as well for every shirt that's sold. But I love wearing that shirt now. I wear it, you know, through airports. I wore it through a casino in Vegas.
That's a good style. Everybody in there is addicted to porn.
Yeah, and in order to say that, I think you have to have a definition of what a man is, number one. So I think most males today don't know what it means to be a man. And I'm not the expert here. We've had a lot of conversations with great men, great masculinity coaches. I default to Ryan Michler, host of Order of Man. When I had him on the show, I said, Ryan, what's a man? And he's got kind of the three pillars, right? The protect, provide, and preside. So you're here to protect yourself. You're here to protect those that you're responsible for. You're here to provide food, resources, shelter, and preside. You're here to preside kind of over a mission or a calling or something that's bigger than yourself. When you're operating from a framework like that, like you do have a clear mission of what your life is, and it's in service of others. Men are here to serve other people. We're here to be a resource for other people, a physical resource, a financial resource, a security resource, whatever it is. But your role as a man is to serve other people. Pornography does none of that. Pornography is self-serving. It's using other people to pleasure yourself. We can do a whole conversation of what's going on behind the screens. I don't know if we'll get there today as well. But in order to have a statement that real men don't watch porn and be able to stand on it, I think it starts with knowing what a man truly is. So when I hear that every guy does it or whatever, I simply see that as weak beta male deflection from really being willing to look at the problem.
Yeah, I made a post that generated a lot of controversy that said, guys, and I use the word guys consciously because again, they're not men. So I said, guys, stop paying for porn. Go look in the mirror you'll see a pussy for free.
Oh, wow.
That, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
got some fun comments. Yeah, the advice that I told that woman who messaged me, I was like, if you've had multiple conversations with him and he's still not willing to accept what the problem is and you know, stop projecting the problem elsewhere, like, oh, it's just all guys do it, and take ownership, find a new boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like, ditch him.
Yeah.
That will be a wake-up call.
Well, and also, man, you know what I mean? Here's where I'm gonna go. I know my message is not for everybody. I know my coaching is not for everybody, and I don't want it to be. So anything that is going to be classified or deemed as normal, it's not for me. I'm not here to live a normal life, dude. So yeah, porn may be normal for a lot of men out there.
Well, what's normal today? We've got fucking obesity. Being overweight or obese is like 60% of Americans.
Yep.
Most people are stressed out, anxious, depressed, on some form of medication for their chronic illness. Like, that's average.
Yeah.
That's average. So if you want to be average, by all means, keep watching porn.
Yep.
You and I have no interest
None at all.
in being average.
None at all. And that's what's been really cool for me, man, is like a lot of my friends that are like in the high performance, kind of, you know, peak performance entrepreneurship space, maybe they didn't even have what would be classified as an addiction to it. But when I started talking about some of these things and really exposing, you know, the education and some of the dangers, some of the side effects, I've had so many men reach out and say, Frank, I just want to thank you because you having these conversations, you bringing this information to the table and to the surface here has made me look at my life. And yeah, maybe I didn't have an addiction with it, but I'm seeking becoming the absolute best possible man that I can be. And I made the decision to no longer have this as a part of my life. So we are trying to reach the guys that are seeking more and don't want to be just normal. They want to be the peak performers. They want to be the high achievers. Those are the guys that I'm speaking to as well. So yeah, maybe there's a sub-segment of guys out there that it is quote unquote normal, whatever they do. As women that are hearing this, those aren't the guys that you deserve. You deserve the guys that are out there that are chasing becoming real men in this world. So.
Mm-hmm. A couple more things that I just want to mention from my own personal experience with pornography, going back to the negative side effects of porn, and specifically frequent ejaculation, a decrease in energy and drive, right? Because dopamine is the molecule of motivation, right? So if you're just depleting your dopamine all the time, sometimes multiple times a day, you're not going to feel driven to go to the gym, to start your business, right? So that's one of the things that I've noticed. Also, definitely porn-induced erectile dysfunction, inability to really connect with a partner, and also the lowering of testosterone. Yes, frequent ejaculation can play a role in that, and strength too. Like when you were bodybuilding, did you experience like after you would ejaculate, you felt a little bit weaker? Like for me, it's not a huge difference, but I just feel a lack of vitality, right? Because when you ejaculate, prolactin is released, and we feel more calm and relaxed, and that's why, you know, a lot of guys jerk off and then go to bed, right? A lot of guys don't really jerk off and go crush a hard workout. Is that something you would experience with?
You know what, Taylor, man, I wish I could say yes, but honestly, through my career, I would probably say 80% of the days I went to the gym, it was a part of my like pre-gym ritual.
Okay.
Like I would masturbate, then I pre-workout, then I drive to the gym.
Maybe that pre-workout's just masking it.
I'm sure there definitely was a masking component there. I was probably on more caffeine than I needed. Maybe I would have been stronger than I was at the time. I didn't train as a...
Take out the probably and the maybe.
Yeah. I probably would have been.
Yeah.
But I also wasn't training for strength back then. I would have been a better bodybuilder as well. I'm going to remove the probably. I definitely would have been a better bodybuilder at the time. So no, I didn't think about it back then, but now as you're bringing it up, I'm 100%. Yeah, I would say I probably would have been a whole lot better in the gym without it.
Next thing I want to get into is the vulnerability aspect that you experienced from your friend, really just out of the blue admitting that he had a porn addiction, and how that was able to lead to this accountability and support. So how important is vulnerability when dealing with these things?
Oh, it's massive, right? I mean, we've touched on it here a couple times already, just like in the lack of wholeness or, the true authenticity of who you are. Like, vulnerability is sharing your full self with others without fear of judgment, and if there's a secret in your life that you're holding on to, that means you're holding on due to fear of judgment. So I think it is one of the biggest hurdles that we must all overcome.
How can guys start to become more vulnerable, especially with something like this? Because for myself, like, I didn't tell anybody. Like, I dealt with this porn addiction myself for a long time because I didn't want to let anybody know. It's like, this is something that I don't want people to know about me. So I dealt with it by myself for a while until I started to understand the importance of vulnerability and support, and having a group of men that can help hold you accountable.
And when did you really start to find some success in it? Was it after you recruited other men into the fight with you, or were you having some success on your own?
I had success on my own.
Really? Okay.
This was a pattern in my life because I knew it was a problem for a while, and I was avoiding it because, one, it was I was scared to give it up because I knew how challenging it would be, and two, I didn't want to give it up because dopamine was like, hey, this is fun, right? So when I finally decided to stop, it's like, okay, well, that's it, really. And when I commit to something, I can just get it done.
Yeah.
So I built up this willpower muscle. If I would have had a support group and like somebody to talk to about this, that would have been significantly easier, which is why I always recommend, when going through any challenge or any lifestyle change, you have a group of male friends who can help hold you accountable, support you, call you out on your bullshit.
Yeah. I think the path to learning to be vulnerable is by becoming vulnerable. It sounds like an oxymoron, right? You become vulnerable by being vulnerable. But, a piece of advice I try to give as many men as possible is like, find the person in your life that you can entrust in, right? Find the bigger brother, find the uncle, find the mentor, find the coach online, find the therapist, find the pastor. Make sure that the first person you have the conversation with, that you're going to share it with, provides that safe space. Because what can deter a man from seeking vulnerability is when he shares it with the wrong person.
Judgment. And
then there's the judgment, right? So I think that first share is incredibly crucial. So for me, it was great to have Zach there, right? Somebody that I had a close personal relationship with, somebody that I held a lot of respect for, somebody that I really looked at as like, it's a good, solid man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want more of the virtues that Zach has in his life. And he had already shared it with me, so I knew that there wasn't going to be judgment through him. So a young man that's listening, or even an older man that's hearing this today, like, find the guy in your life that you can fully entrust in. I think that's different for everybody. I don't think it's your wife. I don't think it's your girlfriend.
It's got to be a man.
Yeah. Oftentimes, it's probably not going to be your best friend first. Somebody you have a personal relationship with, but probably somebody that maybe has parts of their life that you're seeking and desiring to have, like a true mentor, right? Somebody that's maybe a few stages ahead of you in your fitness, or a few stages ahead of you in your business, or a few stages ahead of you in your relationship. Yeah. Chances are, if they're where you want to be, they've been where you are already. So they're going to understand the problems, they're going to understand the pathway to helping you get there. So yeah, I don't think that there's like a secret, mantra or, a book. I think you become vulnerable by being vulnerable. But the key is finding that first person that you can truly entrust in, and you can have the conversation with without judgment.
Yeah.
That's why all of our consultation calls, like, I open up, letting them know the power of what they're going to do just with me on that one call. Like, providing a safe space for you. Everything that's shared here today stays here. So I'm giving them the freedom, right? Like, this is the safe place that you need. And I tell them, whether or not you decide to join one of our programs, or you join our coaching or whatever, just having a conversation with me today, I think, is the beginning of your freedom into journey. So yeah, just having a safe place. It's one thing I don't really like about the traditional kind of support groups that are like, their victim mindset, like you just get these group of guys and it's like, yeah, they're struggling, but they just show up weekly and it's like, yeah, I struggled again. It's like, it's okay. Like
trauma bonding.
Yeah, exactly is what it is, right? It's like they find other men that are in the same exact place and are in our victim mindset as well. And it just, now it's creates this whole ecosystem of like, well, we're not really making any progress, but we'll pat each other on the back and be like, try harder next week. No, fucking decide first and then put in the work. So yeah, I think finding the right place, finding somebody you can trust in without judgment.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've had multiple guys in my men's community admit their porn addiction on our calls, and of course it stays there. Like nobody's ever going to know about it.
Yeah, when you're in a circle of people that are all working towards becoming better for themselves, like that's the place you want to do that kind of stuff in.
Yeah, awesome. All right, last question before we get into 2 questions that I ask every podcast.
Last question before we get to the last 2 questions.
Yes,
Got it.
yes, and it's going to be a big one. What are the 7 steps to living a life porn-free?
Oh. I wrote a book called The 7 Steps to Creating a Porn-Free Life. So
heck yeah, we'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah. First step is acknowledge and admit that there's a problem, right? And that's, like that's not anything kind of, like groundbreaking or revolutionary. That's the first step of 12 steps as well. You must actually admit and recognize that there is a problem. Not that you think that maybe you're struggling with it. Not that, well, maybe it's having an impact. No. Porn is a major problem in my life and it's affecting me in these specific areas. So recognize and admit and acknowledge a problem within your life. Step 1 step.
On that, and this goes for any emotion that we feel.
Yeah.
A lot of guys think that if they feel overwhelmed or depressed or angry that they have to move away from those feelings as fast as possible. But what we resist persists. The longer that you resist and try to avoid, like, no, I don't have a porn addiction, right? The more that's going to consume your life. So 100% accountability, get vulnerable,
exactly.
Right? Admit it to yourself, and then find a mentor, somebody who you trust, who you can also admit to.
Yep. So first step is acknowledge and admit. Step 2 is decide and commit, right? That killing off of the old self. So I've acknowledged that there's this problem in my life. And step 2, I'm deciding and committing to overcoming this and becoming the man that no longer struggles with it. So those are the first 2. And I think if people could just walk away and do that today, they may struggle through the rest. We give you a better framework to kind of really execute the rest of it. But those 2 steps in and of themselves will change your life in anything. You mentioned a couple emotional things. Struggling with losing the weight, right? Maybe you're a yo-yo dieter, struggle with staying consistent in the gym, struggle with waking up on time. Whatever it is, admit that there's a problem and decide and commit to changing it. Step 3 is to create a vision for your life without pornography. Tapping into that kind of motivating driver of the dopamine reward center. Like, we don't know where it is we're trying to go through this journey. We're going to struggle to stay consistent with it. So if porn has impacted your ability to create meaningful relationships, what does the next 5 years of your life look like in creating meaningful relationships? What work must you do and what outcome is that going to produce for you? So we walk you through kind of a framework in all the areas of your life to get clear on the picture to get clear on the life, the man that you want to become. So we give you a bigger kind of higher level framework. Then step 4 is taking that vision and then breaking it down into an actionable plan, right? So we can know that we want to have $100,000 in the bank. We want to start a business. We want to lose 25 pounds in the next, 2 years. But how do we break that down into now we have actionable steps that we need to show up and execute today, tomorrow, next week, next month, so forth and so forth. So identify and admit that there's a problem, commit to change, create a vision for your life without it, break that life down into an actionable plan. Step 5 is now the recruitment of the support and accountability that you need. So once again, you're not going to do this journey in and of yourself. You're going to need some help. Is it going to be coach, therapy, pastor? You're going to need some support systems. So what brothers are going to be working through this with as well.
And by the way, even if you can do it yourself, like I did, you will be able to get there faster and with less effort exerted with accountability and support. No man is an island. Like, get the support, get a group of men around you who can.
And I think you're a rare one, man, that you overcame this on your own, because I think most porn addictions, most of them have an element of, like, there's lack of connection with others, you know, so we feel disconnected in our own life, so we seek out the screen and we seek out pornography to create meaningful relationships or some type of connection. So if the root of your addiction is that isolation because you've been by yourself all the time, you're definitely going to need some group or some help that you're going to walk through it with as well. So acknowledge and admit the problem, decide and commit, create a vision for the life without it, break that down into an actionable plan, recruit the accountability that you need. Step 6 is to live in a state of gratitude, because here's the work, right? And like, this is where it gets difficult. Your brain is going in one area, you have all these old patterns of behavior that you want to go through. You're going to be stressed, triggered, urges, all these things. If you're not operating out of a state of gratitude through this entire process, the likelihood of you falling back into the patterns of behavior is just at a higher probability. So we believe in a daily gratitude practice. It shifts your perspective. You now live in a state of abundance, and I think abundance and gratitude, when you're in those states, like, you don't seek the meaningless pleasure anymore. So our 6th step is to live in a state of gratitude. And then step 7 is the building of self-belief. So I touched on it briefly earlier in the conversation, that most men that have struggled with a porn addiction have tried and failed at least once, if not multiple times. Yeah. And I think when you've tried and failed something, it just does a massive blow in your confidence. And I can't tell you how many men I talk to that believe that they will never overcome this. They believe that, yeah, I may make some success, but it's always going to be a part of my life. If you don't have that true belief in and of yourself, if you don't truly feel that confidence that you can overcome and transcend this and actually create that life, then you're destitute for failure. So 7th step is just the building of belief. So those are the 7 steps. You can find that at the7stepguide.com.
Heck yeah. I lied. One more question before we get to the last 2 questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you imagine that there is a healthy way to consume porn? Like, is there a way to incorporate porn into our life somehow to where it's not addicting, to where it's not depleting in any way?
I don't want to say it's a tough question for me to answer, but I will say I don't believe that everybody who looks at pornography becomes addicted. So I believe that, yeah, like, you could probably look at it and not have it become a problem. The okay components is, I think, where I wrestle a bit, because I've seen the darker side of the industry, and I know what goes on behind the scenes, that there's a morality component and there's a exploitation component that is taking place in the world today. There's a human trafficking side of things that I've been exposed to enough of it that I truly see pornography and the whole sex exploitation industry as a very strong force of evil. And I think a lot of this comes into my worldview, my faith, and kind of how I see the world here today, that I don't think it's okay. I truly think that it's driven by evil, the entire industry in and of itself. Now, what people do with their own choices and decisions, you're here to live your own life. So I wrestle with answering the question, right? Because, like I said, I don't think that every person that looks at it is going to get addicted to it, but I wrestle with saying, yeah, it's okay to consume it, because I know probably what's driving 90% of it. Yeah, now there's the consensual stuff as well, but now you're getting into, do you support, I guess, the sex industry? Do you support, people using their bodies as a way to, create income or financial or whatever? And I'm not a person that supports that, because I think when a person, and I've had enough conversations with ex-porn stars, when you're selling your body for money, essentially you're selling your soul. So it's a tough one, right? But no, I don't think that every person that looks at it gets addicted, but too many parts of my worldview see it through a different lens that I think it's truly driven by evil. So I would love to see the world that it's no longer here. And I don't know if we'll ever get there.
I don't imagine so. With free will, it's like, I don't imagine a world where there's, trying to figure out how to phrase this the right way, where there's, I can't even think of it, where there's none of nothing is what's coming to mind. Like, I don't think we're going to completely eliminate anything.
Yeah. Right?
Like, just with free will and the amount of people on the planet, like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right?
So it'll always be there. I'd love to see it, not as accessible as it is. I think we're making a lot of, I say we, there's great organizations out there that are fighting this cause. In terms of, age verification, like I don't think a 12-year-old boy should be able to pull it up on a phone. I think there needs to be better barriers to entry.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's the world that eventually we'll get to. Because it's just destroying too many young boys.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if people could be inside my inbox on a daily basis and just hear from the amount of lost boys, 15, 16 years old, that just don't know how to get out of it and don't want to go to their parents, and they're already caught up in it. So the way that it is in the world today needs to be changed, but I'm in agreement with you. I don't think that there ever becomes a point where it's completely gone. Yeah, I want to say that's definitely what we're fighting for, with a big part of our mission. But like you said, even me saying that it's driven by evil, we're always going to have evil in the world as well. So it will always be here.
Last two questions, for real this time. Number one, what are you most excited about right now?
On a macro or micro? I'm excited. I'm excited for this, right? Just getting this out there and into the world. I really look forward to this conversation all day long. We have some exciting things going on in terms of projects that we're working on right now. So there's a book in the works. I think that's going to be really game changing. We're working on a 30-day dopamine reset program product as well. So that's really exciting, just in terms of bringing more value to the men that we serve and to the audience. Podcast is great, making great headways. Dude, I'm fired up for life, man. Truthfully, I wake up every day just excited to do the things that are presented in front of me. So I'm excited for this weekend. It's obviously Easter weekend. I'm going to spend some great time with my family. I'm fired up, man. I love my life.
Heck yeah. Last question.
Yeah.
What does thriving mean to you?
Good question. Yeah, because it's not, not just getting by. So it's not just doing the status quo. It's it kind of brings me to a question I end every episode of my podcast with, which is called The Superhuman Life. So always end it with, what does it mean to live a superhuman life? And I kind of give my definition of that. So that's kind of where I'm being pulled to right now. I think thriving is. So I believe we're all here for a purpose. We're not on this planet by accident. There's something that we're all supposed to be doing, and I think what we're here to do is designed to be in service of others. So for you, clearly a part of what you're here for is these conversations, the captain's lifestyle, and how that brings value to other people's lives. So I think thriving is living in your purpose, which your purpose is going to be centered and focused on serving other people to bring out the good for them. So I think when you understand that dynamic, that you're here to serve and help others, and you're aggressively attacking it every single day with intention, and you're trying to become better, I think that's thriving.
You fucking nailed it. So my purpose is to make thriving standard.
Yeah, let's go, bro.
Got a little sticker for you.
Yeah, let's go.
So thank you for coming on the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast and helping me fulfill my purpose to make thriving standard. Where can we find more about you, what you're doing, the books, courses, everything?
Yeah, so I mentioned the podcast a couple times here. It's called The Superhuman Life. You can find us on any platform out there. 187, 190 episodes at this point. It's a bi-weekly show just like this. We love these kind of conversational style flows. So find us there. Me, Coach Frank Rich, anywhere. So Coach Frank Rich on Instagram, Coach Frank Rich on YouTube. We took a small little break there, but we had for over 2.5 years put a video up every single day on our YouTube channel. So there's a lot of content out there. So check us out there on all the social, Coach Frank Rich. And if you're interested in learning more about what we do at Rebuilt Recovery, you can find that at rebuiltrecovery.com.
Heck yeah. Frank,
Hey,
thanks for coming on.
appreciate you, bro.
Got it. Live the Captain's Lifestyle. Peace. Heck yeah.
Yeah.